Everything in the movie uses the metric system, but for the PSI in the suits, which is an English system.
I'm Andy Weir, and I wrote The Martian. Deliberate mistakes in the book that I made. The first one is Mars's atmosphere is not thick enough or strong enough to cause any damage with a windstorm.
According to US law, the American flag should be on the speaker's right, a position of honor. Peekaboo! I see you, camera person. NASA must use a special smart keyboard because just look at where his fingers are when he pressed the letter M. Also note how his desk is clean, but then on the video log it has maps and charts right in front of him. The potatoes were supposed to be eaten on Thanksgiving. The book author said Sol 1 was on November 7, 2035. So Sol 18, when the crew left Mars, falls on November 24, which is 2 days after Thanksgiving. So those potatoes would have already been eaten. Going a little overboard with the individual labeled and sealed poop bags, I wonder whose job is to study those samples. Mars soil is too salty to grow potatoes. We don't see him solve that problem.
So I gotta make a lot more water.
There's just water everywhere, so Mark would have had no problem. He could have just gone out and dug up some dirt, brought it in, and heated it up.
I forgot to account for the excess oxygen that...
The reaction, however, is limited by hydrogen, and he has control over that. So increasing the amount of oxygen won't cause an explosion. Also, Mark wasn't wearing a spacesuit, so he wouldn't have added oxygen to the room, but would have removed some instead.
Hydrazine reduction is a highly exothermic process, and the HAB would increase about 400 degrees Celsius during that time. And be like, so you'd just die.
Meteorology estimates that he'll be covered in sand from normal weather activity within a year.
Another one of those impossible storms, and he'd be gone unless meteorology forecasted clear skies with chances of a light breeze for a year.
Bad news, it involves me digging up the radioisotope thermoelectric generator.
It's okay. You should all be dying of cancer anyway, due to the amount of radiation exposure you're all subjected to on Mars.
In the book, there's this thin, flexible material that just magically takes care of radiation.
In NASA, they need to go to the cafeteria's hanging picture to look at a map of Mars. This lady's sole job was to wait for him to get out of the car. In reality, the lander bounced at least 15 times inside an airbag cocoon before coming to a rest, while the remaining rocket thrust carried the back shell and parachute away from the landing site. Replicas are used on Earth to test or troubleshoot issues, but not used like space walkie-talkie. The gravity on Mars is about 40% of what is on Earth. Therefore, he and the other astronauts would have walked with a slight bounce, not as much as what you'd see on the moon, but still noticeable. Letter Goddess of Phobos was purely a text adventure and did not have a title screen. The hexadecimal system does not have a question mark. It only has 16 symbols, 0 to 9 and A to F, thus the name. GoPro cameras have a fixed lens, so Mark fumbling on the lenses with his potato cam is pretty much useless. I wonder if GoPro, who paid for this product placement, is also wondering what the heck is he doing. Really? He's fixing the hole with some magic plastic sheeting? He might as well have tried wrapping himself in it and click his heels 3 times. I bet that would have worked. On a more serious note, as soon as he tried to pressurize the room, it would apply 3.2 tons of pressure onto the seal and blow it away. Even if it did hold, then with that much pressure, it wouldn't flutter no matter how strong the outside wind was. He has to sign his message just in case NASA confuses him with the other stranded astronaut on Mars. The sun looks the same size it looks from Earth. However, Mars is 1.52 astronomical units from the sun, which means the sun looks about 50% smaller than shown, less bright, and likely to set in shades of blue. Apparently, if you need to run complex calculations, which I'm sure NASA runs them all the time, you need to go down to the servers and plug in your laptop. I wonder why he's the only one there though. That room should be full of smart people with laptops plugged in.
What the hell is Project Elrond?
Because it's a secret meeting.
How do you know that? Why does Elrond mean secret meeting? Hermes has 4 redundant flight computers, each connected to 3 redundant comm systems.
Yet the HAB on Mars only has 1 comm system. I guess all the redundancy stayed with the ship and didn't want to go to Mars. Not to mention that Mars already has several satellites in orbit that communicate with Earth, so he could have tried to tap into those. He cut a hole in the rover to carry more stuff, but he could have just strapped it on top of it, or somewhere else on the trailers. In the book, he has 2 rovers and turned one of the rovers into a trailer, no hole needed. The China National Space Administration doesn't have any railroads nearby. Real spaceships probably would not look like that. The Hermes is one luxurious and spacious way to travel. And cut! Sorry, but that signature didn't have the right emotion. We need to redo it. Oops, never mind. We took too much stuff out. Let's put that console back so we can take it out again.
The secondary, tertiary comm systems.
If we follow movie reality that Mars has strong storms, then how come this MAV has been here for years, subject to storms, and never tipped over? When he reaches Ares 4, he exits the rover and opens the door, but the tarp bubble stays inflated.
We finished attaching the tethers into one long line. It's 214 meters long.
But when we see the tether, it's just rolled into one long line with no signs of knots or attachments holding the line together. From this angle, it is just an empty bubble. Nuts and bolts shouldn't be floating around since the spacecraft is still accelerating. Who goes on the spacewalk without a tether? No one, that's who. She changed directions in zero gravity without touching anything. Well, maybe possibly lightly brushing the hull with her left hand.
Got it?
It's not like you can drop something on the ground in space. Even if the bomb slipped his grip, it would just float. One hole in his hand would not make him fly like Iron Man. He would spin around his center of gravity and go nowhere. When they got closer to each other, they would spin faster and faster and not stop when they collided, just like an ice skater.
I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this.
Because I'm stupid.